So Keith McHenry looked a lot like most of you in 1980 when he had finished college with an art major, and he went on to work as an artist and graphic designer. He did a lot of different things, designed logos, designed materials, and he and some friends thought it was criminal that food was being thrown away and decided to give it away publicly on the streets of Cambridge and Boston. And Food Forward was born. Now Food Not Bombs was born. Food Not Bombs has grown into an international food relief organization with thousands of chapters around the world, probably chapters you don't even know exist yet. Right? The Food Not Bombs has been translated to many, many languages. You'll see some of those languages when you come to the art gallery at 2 o'clock. But just a few people having an idea has given literally billions of meals to hungry and homeless people who need it. And let it not be said that one person cannot make a difference, because you can. And here's our living proof. So I find it criminal that right now in California and in many of the states in our democracy, we have criminalized the giving away of free food to people on the streets in public spaces. And a lot of what Followed Fruit does is engage public space in new ways and reimagine public space and allow for us to create new ways of thinking about public space as a vehicle for social change. And of course, Food Not Bombs has been on the streets for, 30 years? 35 years. So I'm going to stop talking now, and I'm sure you're not here to hear many more from me, but I wanted you to know who you're listening to. Thank you for being here, Keith McHenry.
Thanks, Laurel, and everybody that hung the show and that organized this event. This is really exciting. So this is going to be a different presentation than I usually give because it's an more art-related presentation. So I was studying painting and sculpture at Boston University, which is like a little-known secret art school, basically. And at one point, and you may have this happen as you get to be towards the end of your time here, it was suggested by the professors to go out and see what's up at the galleries, because you're going to sell your paintings to art galleries and so on. So this is in the late 70s. And I went to a gallery, and there was these, they used to have these yuppies. I don't think they're so popular anymore, but these were people that were like kind of high-flying people that typically did cocaine and drove BMWs. That's the way we perceived it at the time. And I'm in this art gallery on this very fancy street, and there's this very poorly made series of paintings in this gallery, and the couple is going, oh, this one will sell for increase by 17.3% annually. He's like a very good investment, and you could tell that they were going to buy this painting and put it in a vault, or maybe have it in some in their apartment or something, but it would really not be part of society. And I've been studying art history and all these things with my curriculum, so I was like, wow, I don't really want to have like a really bad quality painting that I did on a wall that's going to increase by so many percentages annually as an investment, because it kept talking about it as a great investment. Not that that's necessarily totally the worst thing, but to only have your art be an investment, not to be art that people really cared about. And so I, then shortly after that, I went to, I had a job working at this museum, and I came out for lunch, and there was a woman talking about how Reagan was going to make even more nuclear bombs, and the Soviet Union had nuclear bombs, and there's thousands of them pointing at each other, and they're going to, everyone on Earth could be killed. And I was like, maybe that is the issue to do art around today, not like field paintings that have no real vision to them. So that got me thinking I wanted to do public art. That was the original idea. And at that time, there's a performance artist named Laurie Anderson that was just becoming prominent. And I thought we could take our visual art ideas and her performance art and put them together. So we were thinking in that line at this collective house of artists that I live with in Boston. And at the same time, and could be a good suggestion to students, I had a job also as a produce manager at a natural food store. And I would, what's great about that is you have to have all the produce up by the time the store opens. So you're basically free for the rest of the day to go to class. And so I'd get all this produce, and it just was like people didn't know about organic produce at the time and would wilt. And I'd have to put it in these boxes and throw it out. And it occurred to me that I could take this produce to the housing projects about 3 blocks away in Cambridge on Portland Ave. So I take the produce there, and I'm talking to the people, and they're like going, oh wow, you could, they're like all excited about it, but we were having conversations about this brand new building being built across the street. I'm like, why were they building this new building while they're not fixing up the projects? And it turned out it was a lab for designing guidance system for intercontinental nuclear missiles. And that gave us the idea to have the name Food Not Bombs. And then the thing that was happening also at that time is we were protesting Seabrook Nuclear Power Station, and I had a professor, Howard Zinn, who wrote A People's History of the United States, and he would go up to the protests, and so I started going to the protests. And one of my classmates, Brian Feigenbaum, was arrested and charged with felony assault of a police officer, which is essentially what happened is he was the media spokesperson, so they knew his name because it was under his face on TV. So he was chosen to be the person to persecute. And so we started to do bake sales to raise money outside the student union, try to get money to pay for his lawyer, pay for his expenses, and we wouldn't make any money at all. It was like, students are going to buy like enough cupcakes to pay for a lawyer. So what we decided to, at the same time, I had a moving company, because even in the 70s and 80s, you had to have a lot of jobs to be a student. So I had this whole van, and I would move people, and I had my company called Smooth Move. And I'm moving this family, and they have like a sign, a poster that they're throwing away saying, wouldn't it be a beautiful day if the schools had all the money they needed and the Air Force had to hold a big sale to buy a bomber? Like, what a great idea. So we go to the Army Navy surplus store and we buy some military uniforms and we make little general badges out of cardboard and stuff. And we're out there with our baked goods and the sign on the table. We're saying, hey, we're trying to buy a bomber. And back then there was this kind of news story about how a bolt from Ace Hardware that cost 30 cents cost like $30 if it was the same bolt to fix a plane. So we're like, we've already got a bolt, we're doing good, like help us out. And people would come up and go, wow, it doesn't seem like you're really generals. You look like kind of scraggly hippies in old military uniforms. And we're like, well, that actually is kind of true, but anyway, this is why we're doing this, and because we're trying to stop Seabrook Nuclear Power Station and our friend get arrested, and there could be nuclear war, and that's why we're telling you this stuff. And so, then the next thing is, we need really even more impact. Come on in, everyone. There's like plenty of space to sit on the floor. And, and people that are a little bit older should get a chair.
There's a seat.
There's a seat here, there's 2 seats here. You can share the presentation with me. And,
there's an empty seat next to you. Can you raise your hand?
Yay! Oh, great. Come on in. It just started, so you haven't missed hardly anything.
There's an empty seat next to you. Raise your hand.
You can watch the video afterwards. Wow, this is really cool. The whole population doubled. There's 2 front seats right here. There's one nice seat here. These 2 seats can be moved around. We have a seat over here. Wow, this is great. So we had this idea that we found out that the people that were building Seabrook Nuclear Power Station were being financed by the Bank of Boston, and the board of directors of the Bank of Boston were also the board of directors of Babcock and Wilcox, which is building this nuclear power station. The board of directors of the company buying this nuclear power station. They were also on the board of Raytheon Missile System, Lockheed, all these things. So they're basically lending themselves money without public oversight from the ratepayers of the state and from the depositors. And we thought, wow, that's very similar to the policies that led to the Great Depression in the 30s. So because I'm taking all this food from my store to the projects, now why don't we just divert a little bit of that food, make a big pot of soup, and have a soup line in front of the stockholders meeting at the, and then we would like say, look at the policies of the Bank of Boston could, and the board of directors could lead to economic crisis in the United States where people would be made homeless and have to eat at soup kitchens. And so while we're making this huge pot of soup, we're getting very impressed with ourselves at how tasty the soup is, but maybe there's not a lot of people to eat it. So we decided about 11:30 at night, saying, we better find some people to come. And it also won't really look like a soup line. It's just the 8 of us standing there, you know, like 2 of us serving and the other people quickly getting in line to get the food. So I went to the Pine Street Inn, which was I think the only shelter at that time in Boston, maybe one of 2 shelters, because homelessness at the beginning of the Reagan administration was, very rare. So I went down, I gave a speech to these guys. They were all sleeping on concrete floors and concrete benches. And there's about 50 to 60, maybe 75 guys in this place. And so I gave a speech from midnight to 12:30, and they're going, oh, this is great, a protest like the 60s, what a great idea, we're against the banks, this is so cool. And so the next day at 12 noon, the people from the inn show up. And so we now have people from that live on the streets eating with us, and all these business people coming out of South Station and stuff. And it's this amazing event. And even some of the stockholders came and ate with us. Other stockholders gave us the middle finger, all upset that we were embarrassing the bank. And it was really cool. And the homeless guys were like, and this was all homeless men at this time, they were like, there's no food for homeless people in Boston. It would be great if you did this every day. So that night, we were washing the pots and pans and everything, and said, man, we should just quit our jobs and do nothing but this. So we did. I gave 2 weeks notice to my boss and said I'd like to still get the produce, and I organized getting tofu at their loading dock, and we got bagel pickups, and we would drive all around the city handing out free food at the housing projects, and then other people would be at our collective house cooking, and we would go down to Harvard Square or the Boston Commons, and we had people would bring a crowd by having drumming. We had 2 friends with drum sets. It would be this huge thing. And then we would have puppet shows, and we made like little Super 8 movies, which we would project behind us while we're serving food, while we're doing puppet shows, and then we'd have live music. And it was just a festival every afternoon. We have our literature table with all of our information, trying to get you to think about all kinds of different ideas, like about the wars in El Salvador and Guatemala and Honduras, about the uprising in Iran that was happening, the Soviet invasion of Poland, about solar power and wind power, about why we're against nuclear power and nuclear war, all these things. We have pamphlets on feminism, on ending racism, homophobia, animal rights, why we're vegan, how we can end world hunger by having plant-based foods. So that was all on our table, and we have all this. You'll actually see, if you get a copy of the book or look through the book, I would set up these panels with all my pictures on them out in the street, not really to sell them, but to get the people talking about the issues that I did posters and design for. And then the other thing we would do, and this influenced the name Food Not Bombs, is we would go around, there'd be a massacre in El Salvador, and we would go out the next day when we knew how many people had been killed, and we would do this thing called dead bodies. So we would my friends would lay down, I taught them how to look really dead when they lay down. I would chalk them, and they'd take white spray paint the outline like they do at a crime scene. We'd get like 20, 30, 40, we tried to get as many what we call dead bodies as possible in a plaza. Odd thing is when people would write into the Boston Globe, what is those dead bodies at Copley Square? The chief of police would say, well, there was no dead people at Copley Square, and nothing happened, and we do not know what they are talking about. And then the other thing is, we would make like these stencils, and now stencil art can be really amazing. Not that you should do it because it's illegal, but what we would do is I had this one where I drew a mushroom cloud, nuclear mushroom cloud, where the shadow was the United States upside down, and but you kind of had to if you're walking one way, it would look like the U.S. If you're walking the other way, it would look like a nuclear mushroom cloud. And I had the word "today" question mark on there. And we would cut them out of those, those poster boards, and then to make so if we lost them or the cops arrested us or whatever, we would just start spray painting lots of cardboard with the same image. That way we could keep cutting them out and having more and more stencils all the time, mass producing them. And we put hundreds, I think somebody estimated about 350 to 400 of those all over Boston in connection with the dead bodies. That's the kind of thing we did. And eventually a play was written about the stencil, and a movie was made, an underground movie was made about it and stuff like that. So that's the kind of things we were doing. And then one day we're doing food not bombs out in Harvard Square, and these people come called the Pepsi Challenge. And they would have college students open cans of Coke the night before so they go flat. And then you would get in line. You'd see this on TV or hear about it on the rock station or in the newspapers. So you knew you were going to get in line, get blindfolded, and try to see which was Coke, which was Pepsi. And so the line would just be huge. So at that same time, we had just moved a printing company, and they gave us all the overprints, which said that one of the brochures about how labor organizers were being killed by death squads in Guatemala because Coca-Cola didn't want to have an increased cost to their sugar cane. And then a dentist had retired and gave us all his little cups, and they were exactly the same cups as the Pepsi Challenge cups. So we decided to take our tofu and fruit, blend it, and we had the tofu smoothie challenge. And so the people would line up and say, take the tofu smoothie challenge, there's more tofu smoothie and nutrition in this cup of tofu smoothie than all the Pepsi products on earth. And then we had a brochure in there, death squads are killing labor organizers in Guatemala on behalf of Coca-Cola. And people were like, whoa, that wasn't on TV, we didn't know about that. And it was like so much fun, and this went on, and then eventually they called the police on us, and the police come out and say, wow, they're friends with city council, with the mayor Alvalucci. If you don't like it, you better move to another corner. And they kept trying to get rid of us, and eventually they gave up and moved to another corner, and we had to come up with some more street theater ideas and more art. And so those are the kinds of things we're doing. We're making all kinds of posters about issues, and I have one that was called Wars Were for Profit, where they took photos and made collages, and we were also trying to create this whole punk image scene with, with stuff like this, where it's like white on black, stickers and stuff like that. And so that's the kind of things we were doing. And then in 1988, I moved to San Francisco, and we decided to do another Food Not Bombs there. We thought this is going to be perfect, the weather's great. I thought it was pretty cold and foggy after a while. Yeah. And it's like the most liberal city in America, and we check it out, and we figure, okay, look at the entrance to Golden Gate Park. I hate to stand here. Hundreds of people from all the world come to visit. You have now 8 years of Reaganomics. You have hundreds of homeless people living in Golden Gate Park. So they could come out to the edge and get lunch. And we found that there was a soup kitchens that served every day but Monday. So we chose Monday from noon until 2 to share food and do our street performances and all that. So we're having this grand time, and this hippie comes by and goes, oh wow, you can get a permit for this. And in Cambridge, every year or two, we'd actually get our street performance permit, which was free, and then all it said is the Food Not Bombs, and this is where you return our belongings if we leave them behind, and you can call us and we'll come pick them up. That's what a permit was in Boston and Cambridge. Here, the guy said, oh, just write a letter to the Parks Department. So I sent a letter off, and then on August 15, 1988, we're doing our street performance. We've got our meals. We have maybe 150 people in line eating. It was like a cool scene. Often when the Dead was touring, we get a lot of Grateful Dead heads coming by to eat with us, and that was happening around that time. And they were playing at the Oakland Coliseum soon, so they got a big crowd. And so it was a lot of fun. And then, lo and behold, on August 15, 1988, all these riot police, 45 riot police, come out of Golden Gate Park and arrest 9 of us for serving food without a permit. It turned out the police had told the Chronicle, San Francisco Chronicle, they were going to do this, so they get a big photo across the whole top page of one of the pages in the Tuesday edition of the paper, a photo of riot police guarding the food from the hungry. And people are like, what? That's insane. You're arresting people, sending riot police out to stop people from feeding the hungry. So people started calling us, going, wow, how can we get involved? So we had a meeting real fast, and we decided, okay, what we'll do is we'll meet at one end of Haight Street, we'll march down the street, we'll tell everyone, bring pots and spoons, you can use them as instruments. One man had done a painting of Spock from Star Trek. And he led us down the street with his painting, and we get to the end, and we set up the food, and lo and behold, the police come out and arrest 29 of us for sharing food without a permit. And then the next week, there's more people, like around 500 people show up, and we march down the street, and we set up, and people are starting to call us and write us letters. Remember, there was no email in 1988 that we were aware of anyway. So people would send us letters saying, how can we get past it? And so we made a flyer. I'd taken notes on how I started this second chapter, and we made a flyer called 7 Steps to Starting Food Not Bombs. So then we mailed that to you so you could get arrested. And so on the third Monday, the police say they were getting overwhelmed. There's a lot of people that get arrested. Hundreds of people want to be jailed for feeding the hungry. So they say, oh, we don't mind that they're feeding the hungry. They're making a political statement, and that's not allowed. Say, what we'll do is we'll give you city buses, take all the homeless out to the RV at the ocean, you can feed them in there and bring them back, but you can't have literature and signs and music and all that. What are you thinking? And we're like, well, we're thinking there's this thing called the First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, and that it's our right to free speech and assembly, and we're also thinking it would be really great to end homelessness and hunger and poverty and war, so we're out here doing that, and not just a charity. So that's the kind of, that they eventually arrested, made 94 arrests that month, and the mayor freaked out and stopped, met with us and gave us a permit so he could stop arresting us. The next year is Tiananmen Square in China, and the homeless people see the students camping in front of Tiananmen Square, so they do a protest where they camp out in front of City Hall saying we don't want to be bothered by the police every night and stuff. And they invite us to provide food, so we did provided meals for 24 hours a day for 27 days. And then they announced there was a shelter, which turned out not to really be true, and they broke up the camp, and they started arresting us for feeding people again. So we started, we were sharing food every day. Now, like twice a day, because we had so many volunteers, and people have become used to eating with us every single day, so we felt obligated. So we're doing street theater, and it was great. Like there was street theater all through the Tent City protest, and now we're still doing more of that in front of City Hall when the politicians come out at noon. There'd be all kinds of activities and stuff, as well as the food. But we also get arrested. So what we would do is we divide the food into thirds. 2 or 3 people would go out with a cardboard sign saying food not bombs. They serve the food, the police arrest them and take them away. Then a couple of more people come out with a little bit more food, the police come, arrest them, take them away. And then we come out with all the rest of the food and make sure everyone got to eat. And this went on every day. Eventually we started a program called Risk Arrest One Day a Month with Food Not Bombs, and we had like church people come out, so they arrested these nuns and priests, and had to arrest nuns to make sure they didn't have guns, nuns with guns and things. And then they came out, and arrested the teachers union, and then eventually this group came out and had a big banner saying National Lawyers Guild, and they came out and the cops looked at that and go, oh wow, maybe we shouldn't arrest them, they're lawyers. They arrested a couple of homeless people and ran away. And then we're preparing all this food for our dinner, and there's this huge earthquake called the Loma Prieta earthquake. Electricity and gas went off, so we go, wow, the cops will be busy dealing with that. They probably want to arrest us today. And we've got propane stoves from the Tent City protest. So we went down and finished preparing the meal. Hundreds more people showed up because there was really no food in town. All the refrigerators and everything was, all the power and gas was off in town. So then, within like an hour or two, all these police people started arriving. It was incredible. Just police vehicle after police vehicle. And we think, whoa, it's like 2 hours after the earthquake and they're going to arrest us, and they're sending even more cops than normal to stop us. But to our surprise, all the police lined up at the very end of the line and waited their turn for dinner. And then they showed up the next morning for breakfast, and this time they were early because they didn't want to have to wait in line. And that ended those arrests, but it inspired people to do food not bombs in many more cities. So people started doing it in the Czech Republic, in London, so there's a group in Prague, there was groups in Melbourne and Sydney, Australia, all the major cities in Canada's had groups by now. There's groups down here in LA and Seattle, and it started to become like a global movement. And also there became like this connection between punk bands and punk art and Food Not Bombs, and that started taking off. So for instance, Propagandhi, I don't know if anybody knows that group, or they were a punk band in Winnipeg. They would have art about Food Not Bombs in their liner notes. Michael Fronte, you might have seen one of his early albums from Spearhead. He has like this really beautiful painting in his liner notes of where it's an apple on one side and it says the word not, and then it has a grenade on the other side. And so there became that kind of thing where taking visual arts and connecting it to music and punk art and stuff. And some of the house bands, so to speak, for Food Not Bombs was Green Day, before they were famous. They were a Food Not Bombs band. There were MDC, Dead Kennedys, Avail, Fugazi. There's like a whole scene of like punk and Food Not Bombs that was connected, and where we really tried to get culture and art and music to be a part of the free vegan meals that we're sharing, because our goal is to change society so no one has to live on the streets and no one has to go hungry. So then we ended up, we had a series of world gatherings where we would teach giant puppet making and banner making as well as cooking. And we started in 92 to make pirate radio stations. There we would have low-watt radio stations and broadcast like our own music and stuff like that. And so we had one gathering was on the 500th anniversary of Columbus discovering the New World. San Francisco was chosen by the U.S. Congress to be the official city to celebrate that disaster. Native Americans were like, wow, we're not too into that, so we're going to have a big protest there. So my first book was coming out at that time, Food Not Bombs, and feeding hungry and building community. And we decided to have our first Food Not Bombs gathering in advance of the big protest. So people from mostly Canada and the US, I think one person from Australia came. And we had a meeting, and we decided, what are the principles of Food Not Bombs? So we created 3 principles: that the food would always be vegan or vegetarian and free to anyone without restriction, rich or poor, drunk or sober. That the second one would be there would be no presidents or directors or leaders or headquarters, that each group would be autonomous and they would use the consensus process, like the process used in Occupy, to make decisions. And we would invite the homeless and the hungry to be in our meetings and help us determine the direction of each Food Not Bombs chapter. And the third principle was that there would be that we weren't a charity, but that we were dedicated to taking nonviolent direct action to change society. So after that, we actually, we have there's a really cool, we had a Columbus puppet and a Native American puppet, and it said not in between, so it's that same theme. Native American, not Columbus. And so we had those kinds of things happen at these gatherings. Then we had another gathering in '95 on the 50th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Human Rights, the UN Declaration of Human Rights. And 1,000 people came to that, and there was all these arrests, and we confirmed our principles. And so this kind of thing kept happening. So today we have over 1,000 Food Not Bombs groups in the world. Each group's autonomous. Most recently, about maybe 2 years ago, was visiting the Food Not Bombs in the Philippines, and they have about 30 groups in Metro Manila, as well as groups in Cebu and down in Davao and all these places. So what they came up with is each group is able to have their own ideas, and these ideas spread culturally. And so what Food Not Bombs does in the Philippines is they open their day with breakfast, where they give out this tofu curd and sugarcane mixture to all the children. The parents bring their children, and then they do art class, and all the kids do drawings and paintings, and you'll see that in the gallery. Photos of that, and they will then put all the pictures on the wall, and the parents and the kids will all talk about their artwork, and then afterwards they'll have a big vegan dinner. Some other places do just other kinds of projects during their meals. So there's still to this day this connection and this idea that this is public art, street performance. It's also food, but it's trying to organize our community so that there's social change. So in closing, like I was arrested over 94 times in San Francisco for feeding people, but that became part of the street performance itself. So in one case, which Abby, my partner, found in a book on the Mon Troupe. I don't know if people know the San Francisco Mon Troupe. They used to come down here and perform. They're strapped with money now, so they don't come south as much. But they, so I was facing 25 to life in prison. I was the first white person to face the California 3 strikes law. And so I had a trial. The first trial was on the opening day of the O.J. Simpson trial, but then I had more court appearances. And on one of the trials, the Mon Troupe decided they would write a play about food not bombs, and they'd perform it on the steps of the courthouse. And so what they did was they had their actor, who was dressed like me and had even an exaggerated version of my beard and everything. And he would hand out bagels, but they were like kind of styrofoam bagels. And then the police would come in with their styrofoam batons and their super big badges and everything and arrest him for sharing food. Meanwhile, right behind them, we had a bags of real bagels. All the defendants are coming in or people coming into court and going to visit their friends in jail would go by. We'd give them the bagels and to eat during their court appearance. And the police would come, the real police, and grab us and arrest us and take us away. So it was like perfectly choreographed. What's it called? Choreographed. That as soon as they're arresting the Mon Troupe guy, the police are arresting me behind them. And so that's kind of some of the street performance that went on. And to this day, we still, in over 71 cities, are facing arrest because of our determination, even though they announced it's illegal to share food, often fear our persistence and abandon their idea. And I should point out that it's been stalled. The LA City Council has proposed a law. It's now currently before the gang subcommittee of the LA City Council to ban the sharing of free food outside in public in all of Los Angeles. And of course that will affect the many, many Food Not Bombs groups that are active. Comida No Bombas and the other chapters here in Los Angeles who would then be facing arrest for doing the work that we do at Pershing Square, East Skid Row, and other MacArthur Park and other parts of Los Angeles. So stay tuned for that because we will need people to come out and risk arrest with Food Not Bombs one day a month, probably, or something like that. We certainly need people to come out and to support Food Not Bombs at like maybe city council meetings, things like that. And there is so much need in LA that if there's not a Food Not Bombs in your neighborhood, you are welcome to start one. And we have materials. The book tells in great detail how to do a Food Not Bombs, but if you can't afford that, there's a couple of flyers, including some steps to starting the Food Not Bombs. So the main thing is to have as much fun as you can, be as creative as you can, think of ways to use your art to support the ideas and goals of Food Not Bombs and goals that Food Not Bombs could support that you're also passionate with. Because, today, when we started, there was as I said, there was probably under 100,000 homeless Americans. And hunger was not nearly as dire as it is today. But today, after all these years of Reaganomics and these economic policies, policies you could read in books like The Shock Doctrine by Naomi Klein and stuff. It has gotten to the point where there's an estimated 3 million homeless Americans. And a study recently came out shows that there's over 60,000 homeless college students in the United States. And so that's more important than ever to not only feed people and to encourage a change towards a plant-based diet, was something that's very important to Food Not Bombs in dealing with the issue of climate change and other things, which we have information about here on the table. But also that we build solidarity in our communities so that we can resist the permanent war that seems to be developing. I don't know if they eventually, while I wasn't paying attention, voted for permanent war, but I know that was a subject of great interest by the Congress, and those kinds of things. So now, do we have time for some questions?
Oh, yes.
Cool. So anybody have any questions or comments? Okay, well, she was first, she beat you, and then you're second, okay?
Hi, I just want to say thank you for coming, and as a person who's actively involved in feeding the homeless, it's really cool to meet the person who's like the grandfather of it all.
No, I'm not that old, thank you.
That's Heidi.
Okay, then you,
Yeah, I was wondering if you have a book of recipes of food that you make.
yes, it's actually in my book, Hungry for Peace. It has recipes for 100 people made from recovered food, based mostly, although some of you may want to purchase or get donated. And then also, if you're not really feeding 100 people, then my first book would have only recipes for 100, and people complained and said, no, I'm never going to feed 100 people, so I also added recipes for 6. And then you're next, and then you're next. Okay.
Alright, how were you guys able to gather so much food to keep the momentum going, like day to day?
Well, you know, the thing that's really important to have this kind of visual presence on the street with the literature and the banner and so on. And then if they arrest you, actually people like want to throw food at you because they want to be a part of this whole phenomenon, because particularly people in the food industry are like, whoa, that's way out there, that doesn't make any sense. So we actually, you could get, you know, like largely we get food from places like Whole Foods, from Einstein Bagels, places like that. But also if you're located relatively close to produce warehouse area, or I know the Silver Lake group gets, they plan their meal to be after the farmer's market, so they get all the food that can't be sold to the farmer's market and add it, and their food is beautiful. And we go to their kitchen, they cook outside under these tents, and it's just amazing. So that's the kind of thing that you do. And it works even in Kenya, we were getting food that was discarded by grocery stores, and you had to, like, you know, it was more complicated, the arrangements and stuff, but they kind of, you know, they liked that we were organized, we didn't come on a regular basis. It was like, it wasn't going to be hundreds of people just, you know, pawing through their dumpsters in the back, which in Africa, of course, would be often the case. So, so that's how we set it up. And it's, there's a flyer up here, it's $100 billion of food is discarded before it even gets to restaurants and stuff. Every year in the United States, it's tons and tons of food, and that then means that there was all that energy to make it, the farm workers that had to pick it and everything was wasted, and then all the water was wasted, all this stuff was wasted, and it's really a shame when you have so many hungry people that you would just destroy it. But there's a law that Bill Clinton passed when he signed NAFTA into law, which is devastating to all the countries in, you know, to Canada, the U.S., and Mexico, and he abolished welfare. When he did that, he signed the Good Samaritan Act as a boon to activists like us, which protects all grocery stores and food vendors from being sued if food made somebody sick that was donated to groups like Food Not Bombs. And because we're vegan, we have no problems with that. No one is reported being made ill at Food Not Bombs. Whereas if we gave out meat or something, that could be a challenge. So all the stores are protected. They're free to give us as much food as they want. Since it's vegan, it's like really super safe for them, and they can't be sued by someone if they claim that they've been made ill with Food Not Bombs. And then you had a question, yes?
My question was, what's your take on GMOs and their growing use, especially being that you guys are vegan and, you know, organic and now, you know?
Yeah, well, we've been organizing against GMOs for a long time, and we actually have groups in St. Louis and Columbia, Missouri, been really like on the front lines for years because that's where Monsanto is headquartered. And GMOs are I wrote an op-ed piece for the Washington Times. There's like Montana wrote one and I wrote one, and mine was against GMOs. And I actually have a flyer up here that talks a bit about that. Where I gave a speech at the World Food Prize, which is supported by the GMO industry. So what's really on that flyer, the backside is the State Department op-ed, which is very parallel to what I wrote in the Washington Times. Probably the leading cause of hunger is genetically modified crops. And many people think, oh, because you hear all those stories, oh, the GMOs will save the world. But some of the reasons that GMOs are the leading cause of world hunger today is because, first of all, many farmers have been displaced off of their fields in places like India and so on, because you have to buy the seeds and the activator chemicals and all that every single season. So what was a tradition of saving seeds has disappeared. And I've read several reports that I was astounded by this, so I did a lot of research to verify this, but over 100,000 farmers committed suicide, many by drinking the ready Roundup as a way of killing themselves in India, because they were going bankrupt because they couldn't afford to pay the loans that they had to take to buy the GMO seeds and chemicals. So if you lose 100,000 people who know how to grow food, and that is this knowledge that is leaving our earth because of the policies of corporations and governments that promote GMOs. The other thing is most GMO food is actually grown for feed, for cattle and sheep and so on, and chickens and that. So the leading cause, according to the United Nations and Earthwatch and many climate scientists, the leading cause of climate change is animal agriculture. So what happens with that is not only are we wasting huge amounts of water, like 32 vegans that use the same amount of water as one non-vegan. That's like really crazy. So like, I forget the number of showers a hamburger is equal to, but so here you're in a drought like California, and you're like eating animals, you're really contributing to climate change. And then what happens with climate change? It's like a vicious cycle. We see droughts because of climate change. We see floods, like the rice crops were wiped out in Southeast Asia because of floods caused by climate change. You have the droughts wiped out the wheat crops in Russia. Russia had to stop exporting wheat, which affected places where they sold wheat to, like Egypt, which then had an uprising as a result of doubling and tripling of wheat prices. So it's all interconnected. So some brave people, like the Haitians after the earthquake, here you had so many people, they were eating like mud and leaves mixed together. And Bill Gates, who's one of the largest proponents of genetically modified foods, he organizes the donation of GMO foods to Haiti, and the farmers met those shipments on the docks and burned all the seeds. So that's very important. Yes?
I think another aspect of GMOs is that it eliminates biodiversity. And that is a real threat to all the flora in our environment. It's ruining the balance of the web of life here on Earth.
Absolutely, right. Because when you have monocropping of genetically modified or engineered crops, it's not the way nature is happening, and it's wiping out massive. It's actually threatening other species. And for instance, the Hopi, Food Not Bombs activists that are in Flagstaff, Arizona, and Durango, Colorado, many of them are of Hopi background. And they've been sharing with me that the Hopi elders are very disturbed because this ancient Hopi corn, the oldest corn in the world, genetically line of corn that's adapted over the centuries. They've lived there for now. They estimate it's like at least a third of it has been poisoned by genetically modified corn, and they're becoming really freaked out by that. And what that would mean, it could mean that they can't actually save the seeds, germinate the seeds, and grow another crop of corn. And GMO, like you say, not only is it biodiversity though, but the other thing that they're finding is that say GMO corn starts to fail after a few years completely. So the farmers are now complaining in the Midwest that their corn doesn't grow as strong, grow as high because of this GMO. And the cutworm, which is the principal reason for genetically modified corn, has become so strong and adapted to the BT corn that they have to dump 2 or 3 times the amount of chemical poisons on it to kill the cutworm, and the GMO doesn't work to actually stop the cutworm from eating it. So we are losing acres and thousands of acres of corn. Corn that could have been fed to humans if it had been developed for that purpose, sweet corn, but corn that is actually designed to go to feedlots.